Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. On to week 11, and we're talking some Big Ten football as Nebraska goes on the road and plays the Michigan Wolverines. This was a game during the summer that we had highlighted. This Nebraska team looked talented. It looked ready to compete for a Big Ten West title. That's obviously not the case, and this Michigan team has been absolutely rolling. Nebraska still has some talent, and they still can challenge you in certain ways. Excited to get into it. Before we do, though, as usual, just want to say thank you guys for all the support, especially the Big Ten fans, the Cornhusker fans. You guys have been awesome, and especially the Michigan fans. You guys know we rock with Michigan. You know we talk a lot of Michigan football. We really do appreciate all the support you guys have shown. Almost 2.3 thousand subscribers. We really do appreciate it. So if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We really do appreciate it. Dill, I'm going to kick it off to you. What are your early takes on this game here in Ann Arbor?
Yeah, I mean, you look up that matchup predictor on ESPN, and it's telling you it's pretty lopsided. And I think you're kind of right. I think people had higher hopes for Nebraska, and obviously it really didn't pan out for them. I do think they're at least competing a little harder with Mickey Joseph. You don't see as many blowouts.
Yes.
Illinois beat him up pretty good, but Illinois has been playing pretty good football for most of the year. So I think you maybe think they are moving in the right direction, but I still think this is a very tough matchup at the end of the day.
And when you look at the matchups within the game and how Michigan stacks up against Nebraska, it really could be an ugly game. The line is sitting at 28.5. I don't know if I'm trying to lay 4 touchdowns with Michigan, especially a team that has struggled to score touchdowns and really blow the doors off teams, especially in the first half. But Nebraska, what have they done really poorly at stop the run? They're allowing 4.5 yards per carry. Mo Ibrahim got going last week against Minnesota. This Nebraska team is the biggest flaw. They have the talent. They have the speed on the outside on both sides of the ball, but they just don't have that physicality on either sides of the trenches. And when it looks like what you look at what Michigan wants to do on the offense side of the ball, run the football with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, I don't really see Nebraska slowing this team down very much.
Yeah, and again, I know we've been harping on it, but those linebackers just aren't playing good enough football for Nebraska right now. And that isn't just them. Their front four isn't dominating at all. And I don't think we thought they were going to be a dominant unit, but they're probably a little worse than we thought. But at the end of the day, what's so disappointing is the linebacker play. And yeah, if you don't have linebacker play, like Blake Corum is so hard to tackle. Donovan Edwards is emerging as a very difficult tackle too. So I just don't see exactly what they're going to do to stop the run. And Michigan has shown if you can't stop it, they're going to run it 40, 50 times a game and just beat you with it.
And really lean on it. And that's when you see when the point differential in the second half for Michigan, no doubt that's a lot of they're just beating you up, smothering you on the offense side of the ball. And you're right. This Nebraska team, we talked about in the summer, like this was like supposed to be the strength of this unit. Luke Reimer, Nick Henry, guys who are just tackling machines in the past. They haven't been great. They haven't been making tackles in the open space. And I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of physicality they have on the inside of the defensive line. Getting pushed around, offensive lines are just working up to backers really easily with this Nebraska team. And that's kind of the story of it. For a Michigan fan, I want to see them lean on the run game. I want to see them kind of continue to establish that dominance. And then when the shots are open downfield, they took a few against Rutgers last night. Still working on that chemistry. JJ probably had one of his worst games that we've seen him play this year. Against the Rutgers defense, that is no slouches. I mean, as much as their offense is not great, this Rutgers team is a pretty good on defense. And Michigan was able to get almost 450 total yards. Flipping sides, still, this Nebraska offensive line, I really do like Casey Thompson. I like Trey Palmer. I like some of the weapons. Anthony Grant has been a very bright spot for Nebraska. But it's really hard to run an offense when you have tackles that really just cannot block. Michigan's had some edge defenders really emerge. Mikey Morris, Yabi Anoma, Braden McGregor, and then Mozzie Smith on the inside. This is where I think the mismatch is really there on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan. I think they're just going to dominate up front.
Yeah, and that's the problem is they're just not going to be able to handle the front four. And Michigan's done a really good job of scheming up blitzes and in doing what they need to do. But in this game, the issue for Nebraska is I don't think Michigan's going to need to blitz a whole lot. Nobody's really needed to blitz a whole lot to get home on them. And I mean, if Casey Thompson doesn't play this game, I don't even see how they keep it in any way interesting. And even if he does, I don't know. It's just like he does give them a chance for sure because he's made some explosive plays down the field, which has probably been the Achilles heel of Michigan. So I think that is their one hope. But at the end of the day, if you can't block the front four, you just really struggle, and that's been Nebraska all year.
And what I'm kind of excited as a Michigan fan is seeing guys like Will Johnson, like DJ Turner, get a chance to work against an alpha receiver in Trey Palmer, who's legitimately one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. They've struggled a little bit with some of those vertical routes and making plays on the football. And we were talking about it last night. DJ Turner is one of the fastest players in the country. The positioning is never a problem. He is a little smaller of a guy, and playing that football against a guy like Trey Palmer, who's very good at making those combat catches and going up and getting the football. That's kind of what you want to see DJ Turner do. And another thing that we've talked about for Michigan is creating turnovers. Going into the game against Rutgers last night, they were only averaging 1 forced turnover per game. They forced 3 last week, and that's kind of how they got themselves pulled away in that game. And it's a Michigan defense that there's no real excuse for not having a lot of turnovers and being a defense that forces a lot of turnovers because of the havoc that front four can create. You have some guys who are real studs on the back end. They just have been dropping some interceptions, not really forcing many fumbles, and not really attacking the football. We saw that happen against Rutgers, and I kind of want to continue to see that happen against a Nebraska team that has really struggled with turnovers, turning the ball over, 2 times per game on offense.
And even more so, can this Michigan D-line take the ball away a little bit? Can they get a strip sack or something?
Yes.
With some plays? Because they were able to – that was part of the game last year. So those edge rushers were very effective. I know they took the one away from us in the Michigan State game that probably would have won it. But those type of plays are so big for a defense. And yeah, if Michigan wants to go where they want to go and beat the likes of a Georgia, Ohio State, some of these real big dog teams, they're probably need to make some plays on that side of the ball just because their offense isn't wildly explosive. And I don't think at this point in the year it's going to become like a peak, what Ohio State looks like when they're flying on all cylinders. So again, being able to make some plays on the defensive end that change games like they were able to do at times last year, I think is an emerging thing that if Michigan can start doing like they did against Rutgers, will make them really tough.
Yeah, and then you look at what Michigan has left. They have Nebraska at home, Illinois at home, who just lost to Michigan State. This is about peaking at the right time. This is about getting you guys healthy. They purposely, if you were playing Ohio State yesterday, Ryan Hayes is probably starting at left tackle. Makari Page is probably going at safety. They're holding some guys out to kind of like what Clemson used to do in the ACC. Like, they always looked like they were playing around with their fruit a little bit. But when it mattered, when it got to late November and December, and you had to start winning games in the college football playoffs and the ACC championship game, they're firing on all cylinders. I think that's what Michigan is trying to do. Michigan coming in at minus 28.5. If you have to take a play on this one, are you laying the points with the Wolverines?
If I could be confident that Michigan would play 2 halves well, because when they're playing, their second halves have been so dominant this year, and they would have covered every game easily. But the issue is they're starting so slow in every game, and I don't know. Like, when you look at you need to cover 28. You need to be dominant at every second of the game pretty much, especially with the Nebraska team that might be able to hit a big play or two. And so, no, I don't love the spread, but
if you get it inside of
Nebraska, though,
this is a game where you're definitely not taking Nebraska because the matchup is just a nightmare for Nebraska. This is a Nebraska team that has really struggled with both sides of the fronts. Like, their offense and defensive line has just really struggled with physicality. That is what Michigan does best, and I expect Michigan to establish the run. This could be like Blake Corum's kind of Heisman game, if you will. He's sitting, third in the Heisman odds. This is a game where I think he could go for like 175 yards, 3 touchdowns, kind of what he's been doing all year. But again, it matters what you do in November. I love the matchup for Michigan, but again, when it comes to 20.5 points, especially with Michigan's struggles in the red zone, if you want to cover 20.5 points, you need turnovers, you need to score touchdowns in the red zone. I'm not necessarily super optimistic that's going to happen, but I'm certainly not laying with Nebraska because they're not a team.
You can see them do the Oklahoma type game where they're just so far off the rails and can do nothing right.
If Casey Thompson doesn't play, I don't see Nebraska scoring much over 10 points. I'd probably see Michigan getting to 35 to 40 points. And the lean is to Michigan to cover the 20.5. I would like it a lot more if you get rid of that hook and get it inside of 4 touchdowns. But again, I think Michigan rolls in this one. I think it's a confidence booster. I think it's one of those games where you get your guys right. You pull them out for the fourth quarter because you have a good big game against Illinois, and then you obviously have a massive one at the end of November against the Buckeyes. that'll do it from the fellas. Again, we appreciate all the support, especially the Michigan fans, man. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.